All right, we're here with Bob Troutwine. Bob, I appreciate you coming on the program.
Thank you for having me.
So you are with Ryzer doing this kind of announcement last week talking about Ryzer Mindset and the XFL. So before we, I guess first jump into like what exactly is Ryzer and what's Ryzer Mindset?
Right. So Ryzer, the parent company, where they got started was registration for camps. So let's say you're the University of, I don't care, State U, and you're having a volleyball camp or softball camp, they would handle the registration. Well, they grew and they're the number one in that space. And so we met up, long story, but it made a lot of sense because over 1 million youngsters were coming through their system. And I was looking for a platform because originally I was doing everything myself. And frankly, I didn't have the bandwidth to scale things to a global level, where anybody in the world could get on there, take the tap, which is my instrument. We'll talk about that. So anyhow, the marriage was made, and it was great, because one of the things that the XFL is doing that I love is, developing these athletes, their mindset. And so, if this is an elevator speech, I say I do the mental part of sports performance in a nutshell. So that's what Ryzer Mindset is. That's what I've done my whole career. But when you say the mental side of sports, it's more encompassing than people think,
Hmm.
and everything. So that's been it. It's been a great ride. I started, believe it or not, this will be my 41st year. So it's been crazy, but long journey, but boy, is it rewarding.
So I always ask my guests, like, give me your superhero origin story. So how did you get from kid in high school to working with athletes at a high level and their mindset? How did you get from A to B?
Well, I didn't play in the NFL. Sorry, or so I don't know. I developed a skill set, and it basically was in test development. And I've always had a love for sports, in particular football. And I coached at the college level. We went to the national championship. Now it was a small, it was NAIA Division II, but you learn those lessons. And that's one of the things I say in a speech. It doesn't matter the level of the program you're affiliated with, but if you can get on and learn the winning ways, it'll carry you far. And so I basically reached out to the Kansas City Chiefs. I was doing a lot of corporate consulting, and they hired me early on to help players transition from football to their second career. I had a lot of corporate contacts, and I was already developing tests for industry like Ford and Sprint. Now it's T-Mobile. And so originally, like I said, I was working with the players. Now that's called player development within the league. But then walking past the draft room, they're pulling their hair out. I wish we knew this about this individual and that. And I said, guys, I do that for my banking clients and my manufacturing. So that's how the ball got rolling. And so the TAP has gone through, the TAP is the Troutwine athletic profile. I knew that we needed an instrument based only on the sports population. Everybody else was trying to take these off the shelf instruments and apply it to sports. And it's like, we got to throw it all out and start from scratch. And so it's gone through a lot of, revision. So originally I was football only at the pro level. And then I got down in the college and high school level some. And again, kind of the niche was I'm known as a football guy, but we're in every sport now, and actually women's sports is I think eclipsed men's sports when you look at all ages across the globe and everything. So, but when I started, you can imagine people didn't give any credence to the mental side of sports. We just well, it's all physical. And there was not this holistic view of the athlete that the XFL has embraced. So it's I've been a lady in waiting, as they say, for 40 years. So it's very gratifying. I'm super stoked for this next chapter.
So I know about mindset. When I saw the word mindset, that was a big deal for me because my number one book. I've given it to my kids. I talk about mindset all the time. Is the mindset book by Carol Dweck, which is my number one go-to life-changing book. You want to read a book about mindset and the difference between a fixed mindset and a growth mindset is that's really the key to the foundation of everything. And so when I saw this come across, I was like, well, this is kind of interesting. So I guess can you explain to fans out there what exactly you mean by mindset?
Yeah, we mean it broader than growth mindset, but definitely, and we have a scale and we measure growth mindset, which is one thing, but we'll measure other mindsets. So I'll give you an example. We just call it Outlook in-house, but it's an interview of how you see yourself and rate your abilities, but also an outer or outward view. Is life fair, and what do I have control over, and those things. So mindset can apply to things like that as well. It's your thought process, but definitely on the growth mindset thing, it's like, do you have to be perfect at practice? And some athletes believe that, and no, practice is where you learn, where you have to make mistakes, and trust me, I've taken everything there is to know about human learning and
Mhm.
motor skill acquisition and all that, and so yeah, if you don't have the growth mindset, you're not taking advantage of their laws, just like gravity and thermodynamics of the universe. That human learning and motor skill development. There's these real basic principles, and the first thing is the individual learning's got to have the right mindset to receive the information. But
Mhm.
then, like I said, we look at mindsets like your mindset towards competition, and then, as I said, your interview and outward view. So yeah, I'm not even sure. I can't give credit to who came up with Ryzer Mindset, but we just said if we use that term, everybody will know what mindset means.
Mhm.
It's easy to relate to. And trust me, over the years, I tried different labels and so on, but I really like that one. I think everybody gets it right off the bat.
Yeah. So if you're an XFL player, you come in, what happens? They go online, they take this test, and then the coaches get a copy of it or something?
Yeah, so there's several things that happen, but of course, nothing happens until the individual completes the TAP assessment. Um, and then once that happens, lots of gears in the motor or whatever start turning. And one thing that happens is immediately the player gets feedback. Of course, anytime you fill something out, well, how did I do? So, it's that, but so much more. Here's your mindset, and frankly, we have so many blind spots. You have blind spots, I have blind spots. I think I'm funny, everybody in the room
Mhm.
thinks that wasn't funny, and so that's why we have to get that into the hands of the athlete. Here's where you stand, here's how to get better. So that's going on, and obviously that information needs to feed to the organization. Is this a good fit? Of course, if we take the player, if we have the player in our locker room, how do we best coach them? And so we can save a coach, instead of doing the trial and error. And I've got to coach Bob Troutwine 3 years to figure out how to handle him when he misses a field goal or whatever. You're going to know that up front, and A, you can be proactive and head those problems off, and then B, reactive. How do I best handle Bob Troutwine? And that type of thing. And then, so that's going on. And as I said, then that player, once they're armed with that information and the coach, you've got everybody pulling the same direction, because we've developed we've called it different things over the years, mental gym, but it's mindset training. And it's all these building blocks at the foundational level. Over 40 years of experience, this is what the great athletes, this is what the elite athletes have in common. And so
Mhm.
we provide you that roadmap. And so, at one time when I was working exclusively really with player evaluation for the scouting. We do our due diligence. We take a player. Well, kind of the information just came to a grinding halt. And unless I was out there in the building and I so happened to run into a position coach, and I might be able to say, hey, you need to handle Tom Brady this way, or you need to handle, Joey Bosa that way. Coaches, it just not, wasn't that seamless throughput. And now, thank goodness, the XFL had an open mindset. That they were like, yeah, this thing, it's a huge pivot point. It's like the hub of a wheel. And so we got player development, player selection, player evaluation. In some contexts, I talk to the trainers, let's say a readiness to return to play. If an individual has gone through God forbid, an injury or something like that, there's information in there useful in that regard. And then as teams are expanding, and we can get into this, finally in athletics across the board, the spotlight is on mental health. And so, we also talk with those individuals. So like I said, when you put it all together, the information is used by everybody in that athlete's support world. And at the high school level, we have a report for the parent as well. And as you can imagine, we talk about some blind spots.
Yeah. Oh, my child is perfect. What are you talking about?
And they're the greatest athlete in the world,
Yeah.
Their stupid coach won't start them, because coach doesn't know anything, but I know my kids, So anyhow, and that's really a blast. And I'm very passionate about, getting down to that youth sports and getting back to that, when we would draft a kid, I call them kids. These are, men and women when we at the pro level, and oh my, this individual is going to struggle with this. What if we could have gotten them at 13, 14, 15, and they could have been working on all these things? So that's where the bus is headed, and then that was why the marriage with Ryzer was so great, because they had all these camp registration athletes coming through the funnel. So here you go, go have a great time at University of whatever, Oregon's football camp. But in the meantime, here's 20 things you can work on. So by next season, your high school experience, is going to even be better,
Yeah. So basically what happens is the athlete will go take this test. They will get a feedback from how they answered it. But then this is something that the coaches would get. And this teaches the coaches how they should, some people like to be yelled at. Some people need that. I'm not that type of person. I don't need to be yelled at. Just tell me what to do and I'll do it. So is that the kind of thing that
exactly
for the player and the coaches?
Yeah. And we're really excited about that. We call them coaching indicators, and we have these really snappy icons, but literally you could, if you were a coach, whether it was like on a tablet, that they, now at practices, a lot of times the drills and things, but you could pull that up, or you could have a wristband, kind of like the quarterbacks on a play. And we have these indicators, and it's just what you said, after a setback. And we have this icon, leave him alone, talk to her, coaching style, communication style. We have these coaching indicators that, because we don't expect a coach to commit every single thing to memory, because it's data rich, all the information we're providing these stakeholders and everything. But yeah, those coaching indicators, I know, boom, on the fly. And as I said earlier, I don't need 2.5 years to figure this out. Here it is, right here from day one. So we've all seen those learning curves and those development curves. So we're just trying to get the slope steeper and higher, and starting early is ideal when we can achieve that.
Interesting. So how did you get involved with the XFL? I mean, there's the USFL out there. There's all these other, you mentioned even working with the Kansas City Chiefs, who have a very good football team. I would assume they have good mindsets over there. But how did you get involved with the XFL?
Well, I was involved with them version 1.0, and I did the whole league. They did this was back in the paper and pencil days, if you can believe that.
So 2001?
Correct, yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So I did the whole league. The player personnel, I don't remember his title, Bill Baker, and he'd been an NFL guy, and we got to talking and everything. And I said, and of course they did the whole deal completely different, and so, and I can't remember the ins and outs, but yeah, it was a one fell swoop. We got everybody, and the information was disseminated. I can remember putting notebooks together,
Oh, wow.
3-ring binders and sending them off and everything. But yeah, we got involved, and of course, time passed, and it's kind of the same story. How did you get into Major League Baseball? How did you get into this sport, that sport? It just, over the years, you develop this huge network and everything. And so, they came calling again. And frankly, my team at Ryzer Mindset gets a lot of credit for getting this XFL ball rolling,
Uh-huh.
And I know quite a few of the coaches and the personnel people on the individual teams, but I didn't have time to call them and, hey,
Uh-huh.
yeah. So I'm
Interesting.
Yeah, this is great.
So the XFL comes in, like, how is, looking at when you're dealing with other leagues, it seems like the XFL has a very unique approach to their player development. You've got Bryant Westbrook talking about the players, helping with the financial aspects. You have Jordan Palmer working specifically with the quarterbacks on their technique. And now you have you guys come in, and now you're working on the players, mindset. Like, what's your kind of take on how the XFL is approaching player development?
Yeah, well, I think they've got the spotlight right where it always needed to be and was sorely missed. And I'll tell you what resonated with me, and now I can't remember where I saw it. I don't think it was a 30 for 30, but The Rock was talking about, his whole motivation. And I was kind of having a hard time keeping a dry eye, because that exact what he was saying just resonated. It's like he gets it totally, and the same with everybody that's on this venture. Yeah, this is what it was supposed to be like from the day one, as far as I'm concerned. So I
Mm-hmm.
was already there in terms of being convinced. And like I said, it's just, I think everybody else, these other leagues that were hyper competitive, win, 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 and that was the focus. They didn't realize that winning is almost not a byproduct, but is a product of all these other things. And if you focus on these other things, the wins will come.
Mm.
And so I just see, if you don't do it the XFL way, you got the horse in front of the cart. I mean, the cart in front of the horse.
Uh-huh.
So that's just my opinion. Like I said, especially in the early days, there was a lot of pushback, even people not believing that sports was mental at all.
It's
So
mostly mental. It's all
yeah,
technique and mostly mental. I mean, we saw, just even the playoff games this weekend. You look at a guy like from Jacksonville,
yeah,
um, you know, down 27-0 and comes back after throwing 4 picks. So it's clearly he's got the mental game to
yeah.
take care of that. So how successful has this been? Like, has there been guys that have come through that have, like, I mean, you don't have to give names, but just examples of guys that taken the test, looked at it, and like changed kind of their mindset and became better players in the long run for their careers, or high school kids that have taken it and gone on to success in college and pros?
Yeah, yeah, there's been quite a few, and definitely on building the reputation of the tap, and the assessment. Of course, early on it was, can we distinguish the people? And one of the things I would say a lot is, we can tell you if this individual can take it to the next level. And so, of course, in professional sports and in college recruiting, you want to be able to know that. And we don't pretend to know anything about the physical part. There's height, weight, speed. Anybody can measure that. But,
Hmm.
all those other intangibles. And then, of course, at first teams were like, oh, this guy's got these problems. You're saying he might have trouble taking it to the next level. We're not going to touch him. But I was like, no, you're not hearing me. If they do X, Y, and Z, they'll be in a much better. It's like playing poker, and you don't go for the outside flush. And you take this guy. You need a particular card to get a flush or a straight. And everything. So they realized, because I could identify, you need to do these things to improve this player's mindset so they will be successful. So and I don't contract with the whole NFL. I just have teams. So my non-client teams would pass on a guy that I'd say he's a good pick. A lot of teams are going to pass on him because they're scared of him. But all you need to do is these three things, and he's going to have that ready for prime time mindset.
Mm-hmm. So let me ask you, in the current playoff scenario, how many, you don't have to name names, but are there a couple teams that are in the playoffs now that you work with?
Yes. Yeah. And that kind of seems to be a annual deal for us, fortunately, so we're very successful. But, you could argue the other way too, that, the teams that are kind of in the basement, I go back to we want a steeper slope and a higher, on the curve, we can get you there quicker. Yeah, there might be a little bit of extra work, but that's another thing, the commodity that's in short supply is time, these coaches and everything. So again, we're saving you time. You don't have to do the trial and error. We're giving you a roadmap. Here's what you do to handle this individual, that individual, and so on. So that's hard to get coaches to buy into. But once they try, they're like, "Wow, you just saved me a lot of time." And one of my NFL teams, they go, "You know what they call you, don't they?" And I go, "No, I can just imagine, because I've got every name." They go, "We call you the guy that gets people promoted."
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, that was one of the best compliments I ever got. So, yeah, we can get you promoted.
That in itself is good enough for everybody to hear.
Yeah.
So last question. So is this a test that like anybody can get done? If you have a high school kid and you're like, hey, or does this like a high school would need to sign up? Like how would you get a test done?
Yeah, I mean, they go to Ryzer.com, and it will tell you, if you're a coach or even a whole athletic department, you can sign up, that way. And there's some advantages to doing that. Or if it's an individual athlete, I mentioned the parent report. So, obviously, if your kid's on a travel team, you're investing a lot of time, and as a parent, wouldn't you want to know how to support your child?
Mm,
And boy, I've got some pretty damning studies and statistics, but the number one thing kids in the ninth grade dread is the ride home with their parents after a contest.
oh wow.
Yeah. And so let's don't go down that rabbit hole. But
Yeah.
yeah, we're trying to get the parents on the right side, and I would say that's the number one complaint. Rec, high school, and amateur sports is, these coaches are just, can you tell me how to deal with these parents? So parent, get out of the way, be a, advocate for your child's, and we all know, right, that athletic is the way to teach mindset skills that you'll use the rest of your life.
Yeah.
As a parent, as a spouse, as an employee, and all the stuff. I go back to the mental health stuff, the resiliency training, and finding, now you're hearing it all the time in the news, mindfulness, all those things that COVID flushed out, that, everybody was affected by it. So these are life skills. They're not just things that, oh, well, the minute you step off the field, you're never going to use this again.
Right.
No. Yeah.
No, this is very fascinating. And definitely have to catch up throughout the season and see how things are going. But Bob, I appreciate it. Bob Troutwine from Ryzer. I appreciate you being on the show.
Well, thanks so much for having me, and I shall be back.
All right. Thanks.